Now, another topic worth discussing here in our review of the foundations of Active Directory has to do with organizational units. And honestly, OUs are routinely misunderstood in terms of what their value is for the organization. I want to show you what an OU is, and then show you at least my impression of where you should implement them, because all too often you find organizations that have implemented OUs in ways that cause them no end of heartache in regular operations. An organizational unit is designed very different from a group, like an Active Directory group, is designed as a mechanism for the division of user accounts and computer accounts for the purposes of IT and IT alone. So for example, an OU could be created for users, and then a sub-OU could be created for finance users. On the computer side, we could create an OU for computers, and then a sub-OU for IT computers, or another one for high-security computers. Now, it is this definition, I think, that confuses a lot of people, especially when they start working with Active Directory and see this nifty new thing that is organizational units. The OU is designed for consumption by IT only. It's an administrative function only. And further, the biggest reason for the existence of organizational units is for the separation of Active Directory group policy and the application of group policy. You can create and manipulate OUs to your heart's content. You can move Active Directory users and computer groups around into different OUs and really have no fundamental change to how they end up operating, except when you begin to go through the process of implementing group policy. And I say that because in order to implement group policy, you have to tag a group policy object to an organizational unit. Now, it's here where I kind of want to step away from the exam for just a second and talk a bit about how you might implement things in your actual Active Directory environment. When you're building your organizational units, if you recognize that the only real use for OUs is for the application of group policy, it is at least Greg's best practice to only create organizational units when you need to do so for the application of group policy. Now, this sounds like a kind of a duh moment, but you find all the time out in the world, you find organizations that have created dozens or hundreds of different OUs that break down their users and computers into various subcontainers and sub-subcontainers, and in some cases sub-sub-subcontainers. But all too often what happens is that the creation of this structure is awesome until the moment that you have to go about ensuring that the proper users and computers are always in the right location. A user account and a computer account can only exist in a single OU at a time. And so on the user side, where it may be easy to make sure that Bob in accounting is always in the accounting OU, it's quite a bit more difficult on a day-to-day basis to know whether or not his computer, which who knows what the name of that computer is, also exists in the appropriate computer-oriented organizational unit. If Bob swaps out his laptop for another machine, are you 100% sure that you'll be able to remove that old computer account and add the new one in every time that action happens? In my experience, that doesn't happen that often, and the more complex the OU structure you find, the less it maps to the real world, shall we say. So Greg's advice, keep your OU structure as simple as possible until you find a group policy-oriented reason to separate it out for one reason or another.